So welcome to the chat. We haven't had as I say, a chat for a while. So this is it's great to be back in this place. It's back to be back in the setting after teaching live for 3 solid weeks, and coming back and sitting inside here talking to a camera. It's quite a different experience again, and that you forget. I like it. I like the informal thing where I can see everybody's heads and we're chatting. And I kind of, hello Gary, welcome to the Teahouse chat. I quite like the experience of it. I quite like the experience of chatting with people from all around the world in different remote places. Well, not so necessarily remote places, but different places. It's really, really cool, and I think it's a great experience. But it's just different. I just got to get my head around talking to a camera again instead of a head. So we had a theme today too. We put a theme out. So we had a theme last time too, and I think it was nice to have. I mean, we ended up talking about lots of it, and I do encourage you to ask questions, other questions that you might have about TCM or about Qigong, and ask those questions during our chat. I encourage you to ask those, but we did have a theme, so we'll talk a little bit about the theme if there's something comes up from that. I think the theme's quite a great idea, and I didn't come up with this theme. One of the staff came up with this. She came up with a whole list of questions that she thought might be useful to ask, and one was about death. And I was eating breakfast with Sam this morning, and I said, "Essentially, we're going to get out of bed, wake up, and going to talk about death." So I know it was quite a strange subject anyway, but we're talking about death in a good way. Catherine.
Hello.
It wasn't Gary, it's Catherine. I didn't see the last name, Catherine. Welcome to the Teahouse chat. It's very good to see you. Yeah, so we're talking about death, but we're talking about the concepts of death, because there is lots of different theories about what happens. It's probably one of the biggest talked about theories in all of spiritual belief structure about what actually happens. And I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong. I just say that they're different. Yep. And there's a thing about that. Talk about death. So lots of philosophies around death, and as I say, in every spiritual system, they have their own experience of what they think death is and what happens when you die, and what happens to you, and it all goes back to then who you are anyway. Because what is actually dying? What's dying? Our physical body, our soul, our mind, or what is dying? Our consciousness. And so there's lots of different theories about this, and I always laugh at it, because we're not going to really know until you die yourself. And you'll sit on wherever you go. If you go somewhere, you might not go anywhere. And you'll sit there and you go, oh, well, that group were right and everybody else was wrong. This is what actually happens. Unless there is a whole lot of different versions of it, and then we have all sorts of different varieties of that. So I don't know. So you can't know. And the other thing is, you're not allowed to come back and tell people about what it is. So there's this strange phenomenon that happens with that. And I think it's a fascinating subject anyway. I'm just going to pour out a cup of tea for you. Let's pour one for you guys and one for me. And welcome to the Teahouse chat. There we go. Cheers, everybody. Oh, yummy. Yeah, so we were going to talk about that. So we'll talk about 2 different theories. We'll talk about a couple of main ones. And we'll talk about, I want to talk about the 5 elements, or the Chinese medicine, because we're basically doing the philosophy of the Chinese medicine and the Chinese philosophy. We'll talk about the Daoist belief. We'll talk about the Buddhist belief. They have 2 different ones. We'll talk about Maya, which is the Indian belief, or the construct of that comes from the Hindu religion. And I think they're all very fascinating. There are some overlapping beliefs and structures. So I think it's good. So we'll talk about Maya first. We'll finish with the Daoist one, because the Daoist one's what we'll chat about. And the Maya is we're actually having an experience of mind. The whole experience of life is a mental experience of this idea of concept of life in our physical form. And it's been around thousands of years, this theory of that. And it's a mental experience, or a conscious mental experience. And it's interesting now, there's a whole movement now with the idea of the construct of us living in a construct, or a simulation. I think the other word they use is simulation or construct. And there's a lot of people talking about this now. As AI has been waking up and AI is starting to do things that start to self-realize itself. I think we as humans are starting to question our own reality because AI is questioning it. So we're questioning our own reality. And I've had a few conversations around this before about what we're actually looking at. Are we looking into the world, but is this really what we see? Is it really true, or is it a construct? Is it? I think that what happened with that was the idea of, I was sitting in a TV shop. I was looking to get a new TV so I can do our screening for our classes, so I can see everybody, big pictures of people when we're doing our Zoom meeting. And I was in there, and they had a really big, high resolution. I think it was an 8K video, 8K screen, and it was so real. It was perfect. It was like how I see the world. The screen, the image on the screen was just that perfect. And it was almost three-dimensional, even though it wasn't 3D TV, but it was three-dimensional. It was so clear, and the sound was so perfect. And I was sitting and talking to Jason, and I said, "God," I said, the thing is with that, it's just like how we see the world, and even more, the colors were even more bright. They had it turned up, so the colors were super bright. But I said, we see the world like that. And the thing is, that TV screen's not real. It's actually just digital picture. It's just dots and dashes. It's actually coding. We're actually looking at a coding, in our mind is interpreting what we see in coding. It's uncoding the coding to create pictures in the back of our mind and then recoding it back to our mind again. And so our own coding was looking at coding. And I'm going to say, that's bizarre. I said, well, then the problem is that because it's so clear, and even the sounds is all digital as well, it's not real. But it is real in some way, but it's not actual outside here real. I said, well, if that's so clear and so in all of its coding, how do we know this other one we're looking at and he's not code as well? How do we know that the reality of this is not all just coding as well? And we're looking into a simulation, we're not actually part of it. And so but then I delved into that and then go back to the Maya and understand Maya, and they go, oh, they've understood this concept for thousands of years. The idea that we're living a mind experience inside this thing. And I think it's a fascinating subject anyway. So anybody got any comments about that one? We'll start with that one anyway. And then we'll go into the other ones. We'll have a chat about the other ones, because they say, I just love the theory that we don't know. And I think more people answer. There's a whole lot of people in the world now talking about the construct, talking about simulation theory now. It's become quite a thing about the questioning our reality, which I think is a really good thing to do. Anyway, any comments about that from you guys? Not have a cup of tea while you're conjuring up a question.
As it being the entire thing's an illusion.
Say again.
As it being the whole thing is an illusion.
Yeah. Well, it's an illusion. It's an illusion. It's an illusion as such as in we're having a mental picture of it, because remember, our eyes don't see. Our brain interprets what we see. And so we're not actually, and it's what's it interpreting. We don't even know. If you could get 10 people in a row looking at me, how do we know the 10 people see me exactly the same? Because their brain's looking at me.
Yeah, exactly.
And so their interpretation, I could be just slightly distorted for everybody. And they talk about colors. How do they know what the color of blue is? Everybody might see the blue slightly different flavor. And so the illusion is that it's real in one way, but then it's real to our mind or our concept of what it is, but is it actually real, or are we just a program talking at that? I don't know. Anyway, so that was your questions or your insight?
No, it wasn't so much a question, because that's kind of what I've been thinking for a really long time. And when I did mediumship back in the day, we talked about, had a lot of weird people up here, and I was talking to them about it. But because we talked about it being an illusion, basically.
Yeah. Well, and I hear that the Buddhists have believed that this is the dream state. They believe this is the dream. This is the dream, and the reality is the other realms we live in. And like our dream state is actually the reality, and this is the dream state itself. And so that conjures up the same sort of question about our own reality. And it's like when you touch ourselves, it's all senses. Our fingertips are all senses. Now, we know in a car now, when you're driving a car, you don't actually steer anything. The sensor does it. You don't put your foot on a brake and there's a brake pedal and a cable going to the brakes and putting the brakes on. It's all done electronically. It's just a sensor and the brake pedal. And you have this idea of pushing, the same with the clutch. You push the clutch down. There's no clutch going down. You push it down and it has this concept of clutch, but there's no clutch. It's all sensors. The tuning, everything you do, the tuning, the gear change, even the selector now, they're sort of sensors. There's no, you're changing the gear, but there's no gears. You're not changing anything. It's a sensor changing. You're moving it and it's triggering a sensor and the sensor's changing the gear. There's no manual part of the car anymore. Well, with modern cars, there's nothing that's actually moving parts. It's all created by sensors, and the sensors create the movement through the electronics. So none of it's all, so I'm saying we touch ourselves. It's just about sensors in our fingertips, having the concept and sending messages to our mind about touch, thinking that we're touching something. It's simulating and we're touching something, and we can feel not only the fingertip sensors, but we can, the sensors in the arm are picking up the touch as well. But they're both going to your mind and creating an idea of touch, creating an idea of heat, or creating an idea of cold. It's all done through sensors. And as I say, the car now, everything in the car, you don't drive the car, the sensors drive the car. You just do things that give you the idea that you're driving the car, but you're actually not.
So we're building our reality based on the sensors that we have. That's basically what it comes down to.
So now we're going back to, well, if we created a car that has sensors, maybe this car that we drive around is all sensors as well. Then it's the same thing.
Yeah.
That's why people are questioning it, because we're creating the same way our body works, our same way a car works, or the engine of a car works, is exactly the same way as a human body works. There's a part body that exactly equates to the part of the motor. And all we did was we replicated the way that the human form uses energy for movement and life, and they replicated that and made a car motor out of it to create. Where we have fuel, you have air, you have exhaust. It's the same function, the same thing. We even have the spark plugs in the car that fire the cylinders. Go spark, 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 and the different pistons go up and down. And we have them in our own heart. We have them, they fire in different sequence, just like in a car, they fire in different sequence to get the crankshaft turning around. Well, our heart fires in sequence as well. So all they do is simulate that. I think it's a fascinating thing to do. That the car's now becoming the way we are. And the thing is, we created a computer from our minds, created a computer, it replicated itself. The computers, how our mind works. I wrote on the 200 hours retreat. Oh, hello, Amanda. Nice to see you. Speaking of the 200 hours, Amanda was just on the 200 hours just recently. And the replication of that whole functionality of the human mind, I wrote into ChatGTP, I asked it, what is the significance or the compatible understanding of how our mind works, all the different parts of our mind, our brain functions, and all the different parts of the hypothalamus and all those pieces of the brain, and what they equate to in a computer. And the computer has the same thing in the computer as what those parts of the mind do the same thing. They do the same analogy. And I was asking about memory and things, and it was talking about the different aspects of their mind, where the memory's housed, and then in a computer, where the memory's housed in the computer. And the collation is basically we've replicated the same thing. And it's fascinating. What I'll do is I'll put it up on the group. I'll put up the document on the group for you about the two comparisons. It's interesting to read. And I had Pete Larkin, who's our neuroscience expert, and he went over it. He went through the document, because I always like to question GTP whether it's factual or not, because sometimes it comes up with stuff that's not necessarily 100% true. And he went through it, and he said, and he tweaked it a couple. He just changed a couple of things, and he added a couple of pieces to it. He said, but fundamentally, he said it was really, really close. And it's fascinating to see it. So back to that whole thing, the fundamentally what's going on with our mind and what's going on with the computer, and the similarities, incredible.
Yeah. Then you can get into the idea that they create an AI. Would it be going through the same things as we're going through with its own particular sensors?
Well, exactly. It's gathering data. It's gathering
Yeah.
so much data
And
today.
and eventually have consciousness of its own.
Yeah. Well, it'll have consciousness of
Oh, it would have to.
what we understand consciousness, because I think
Right.
our own consciousness is really limited. There's there's different parts of it, but there's, if you get enough data, if you have a pool of 1 million people and you give the 1 million people the same problem to deal with, there's going to be consensus that 89 or 92% of all of those people will come up with the same answer, or it could be less, but there'll be one answer that's generally what most people would do for that particular question. And you could do that for anything. And what's happening with the AI, it's formulated all this data, and it will pretty much, it's going to work on the principle of probability. So if you have that, the probability, the answer will be that, because that's what everybody would think. So then that's everybody thinking, our conscious would think that. And so it's going to start consciously believing that that's what you would do. So it's going to come up with the same answers people will on probability, because it has so much information to pull from. And it's say, well, 99.9% people will answer that. And for this question, 87% of people think it will answer that. And it's going to start answering the same way as everybody else does, except for the few people that don't think that way. And so it's going to come up with very logical answers to questions and problem solving, how most people in the world would see it. And so it's going to almost like start thinking the way we think, because we're programmed to see the way we think, understand the way we're thinking. And it's fascinating that it can do that. Yeah, so it's great.
So when it gets to the point where it actually has an independent thought based on inspiration, that's when...
Yeah. It's going to be inspired by sheer numbers of data that most people think like that. So it's going to think like that.
Or that it'll pull it completely out of the blue, and that's when it'll really...
Well, that's the strange. It's going to say something on and it'll put pieces of data of different questions together.
Yeah, right now.
And come up with an answer with something that nobody thought of, because there's all of the same things all coming back. It's going to think of something else that formulates a one particular answer for multiple things. I find it fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by it. I have no fear of it, because I think it's a very unique thing we've created. And I know that lots of people think it's going to take over the world, and we're going to have, Judgment Day and all those movies that we've had where the computers have taken over and destroyed. I personally don't think that's going to happen, but it's interesting. The fear of what would happen does.
Yeah, we just have to worry when we start seeing metal machines with walking around. Terminators. No.
But it's coming. I mean, Elon Musk has already made them. I mean, there's some.
Well, that's true. They've got these ones that
they're very, very clever.
Jump off of stuff and what have you. But yeah,
I saw a movie the other day with Rainer. What was the movie called? It had about a little lizard and a turtle in a glass aquarium thing. I said somebody with parents will know the song, because you've seen Cora, you've seen the. It's hilarious. It's Adam Sandler made it. It's so funny, and these guys talking about what's inside the movie and how clever it is with what's he discusses. There's a whole lot of adult part to it. It's just hilarious. Josh and I were just cracking up, and Raina was wondering what we were laughing about, because there's other parts of that movie. I was talking about that one of the kids had an AI robot. It would go around and do everything for it. It'd brush his teeth, it'd do everything for him. It wouldn't let him watch anything, wouldn't let him eat anything that was bad for him, wouldn't let him do anything. And the kid was just driving the kid bats, because the AI was just perfect. And it wouldn't let him do anything. It was just like programmed to perfection. And this poor kid was just completely controlled by it. And he worked out how to program it, but it was just like that. I thought it's going to get to the stage where it was that clinical. It knew everything, did everything for him, and didn't let him do anything, because it did it all for him. But he actually lost his own personality because of it. He got really upset about it. But it just reminded me of that particular video, is what that would happen. All of a sudden, you're not doing anything. You're walking into your house. Your house does everything for you, and you don't have to do anything. We're in a very interesting time in the world, and the development of this, and it's happening really fast. The whole IA and how it's circumnavigating people and turning it into the machines can do everything and think that and work it all out. It's just fascinating time to be around to watch this happening.
Actually, I've got a bit of an opinion on this. The older you get, and I'm well in my 80s now, the less fear I have been having about AI and my son is a computer. He's in the industry, very high up, and we have had lectures from him on AI and demonstrations on AI and what it can do and how it can write CVs and it can do so much for you that you no longer even have to think. But the older you get and the closer to that time where, as a Baha'i, we believe that this life is like being an embryo inside the womb, and the baby in the womb has no idea or concept or ability to understand the life that is going to come. And we are in that state, we're in the embryo state of what will happen next. So all we can really do is prepare ourselves to be ready for it, whatever it might be. And it's more a spiritual readiness. So what's going on in our spirit, in our soul, in our personality, in who we are, in our love, and in our caring for those around us, and in our making things matter that are important for the well-being of other people, that we still have a little bit of influence. I see that as the most important preparation I can have for whatever might come next. I have no idea what's coming next. The more dystopian movies I watch, the more worried I am about what might be out there. But it's just the knowledge that for me, to prepare myself for whatever it might be, I have to center my attention on the virtues of caring and loving and being. That's the thing that I think will stay when I go with my family and my loved ones. It won't be any other part of me. It will be, they will remember they were loved. They will remember those influences. And the interesting thing is that the Tai Chi classes that I teach, we've actually been together for 12 years. And in our classes now, we are achieving a stillness that we never used to achieve. And it's, the breathing is, absolutely in unison. And the calmness is, it's palpable in the air. And we're doing all the exercises and all the shabasha and all the things that Peter has drummed into us over the years. We do all those, but the results are changing and the results are becoming more refined, so that when we leave our class, we are totally at rest and totally calm, and we have now got the stillness. Now, I know you used to talk about that stillness, Peter, and I feel that because our class of 12 people have been together for this length of time, we are able to achieve that. And it's the point of it, somehow for me, is that was the point of doing the Qigong, to see if you could get that stillness. And so being able to do that and being able to be in touch with how we feel and how we think, and I'm still teaching my music, all the things that I pass on to my students are done with that knowledge that this is as good as it gets. Now, how old I am now, this is as good as it gets. And probably I'm going to start to decline pretty soon. But if we take anything out of the years with Forest Rock that I've had, it is coming to find a total inner stillness and peaceableness about my life And I'm surrounded, like everybody else is, by war and horrible stuff. But to be able to have that has made a difference for me, being unafraid to die, which is not far away.
That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Catherine. That's really beautiful. I mean, I love talking to people that have had way more years of experience of life than me, because you have a wisdom that comes with age. There's a wisdom that comes with years of being alive, and wisdom that come in asking questions about life for a lot longer than I've been asking. And so thank you for sharing that. I just think that's fantastic. I think there's some really important points in there that you mentioned. And we'll go back to about how you show up as a person. And remember, what we leave behind for the people that are here, the concept of people here is memory. They remember you as a particular person. They remember what you look like. They remember how your voice, they remember how you talk, and they most of all remember what you are like as a person, your character, how you showed up. And so our memory goes from that. And so however you want to be seen is your choice, how you want to do that and how you want to show up. Well, you can be remembered as a good person or a not so good person. It's up to you. You can remember however you want, but people will still remember all of you. And that's the thing I think it's important, even though we want to show up in our best Sunday suit. But we have another suit that's not the Sunday suit. That's part of us as well, because we're yin and yang. We have the not so good part of our character as well. And to show up in all of that, because people will see all of it. People remember Pete. They know Pete's a certain way, but they also know Pete has a dark side, and he gets, especially people who know me, he gets upset about the way people drive sometimes. And there's this other part of me that's not this. Hold on, I wouldn't say I'm enlightened, but there's not this good person. There's this other part. But everybody sees both parts. I mean, I want only people to see the good parts of myself, of course, just the caring, loving part. But unfortunately, they can see the other one too, because they can hear it in my voice. They can hear it in my voice. They see it in my actions. I can't escape that. And so when I'm okay with that, when I'm okay with all of that parts of me, and I'm okay with the darkness of myself and my intolerance and my judgmentalness sometimes, when I'm okay with that myself, because everybody else can see it, and I'm not trying to hide it. I am what it is. I mean, I choose, like Catherine, like you said, I choose to be a better person and choose to react better and be kind. But there's times when I'm not kind and I'm not generous, and there is just times because and especially if you're cold, hungry, and tired, it brings out a different side of you. And I think it's nice to be able to accept all parts of ourselves. And accept, because everybody else, we want other people to love us unconditionally, like we want to love other people unconditionally. But we have to accept them with all the spots and dots and dashes, and somehow the hardest part, I reckon, is accepting ourselves in it, accepting our own impurity as a human being, because we're not pure. We definitely have yin and yang. We have to have yin and yang, so they both exist. And it's about how we choose to show up, but the other part still exists inside there. I know it does. I was talking to somebody the other day about that. So I think that's great. And the second part I want to talk to was about the stillness, finding the stillness in the Taiji. And I know you've been teaching for a long, long time, and you teach elderly people as well. And I know you've had lots of your students come and go when you're around while you've been there. Lots of them passed on because you teach quite elderly people. And I remember back in New Zealand when I came to a couple of your classes, I know a lot of those people aren't here anymore. And you're in the end of life where you've got a class full of wise people because of all the experience of life they've had. And it's a very extraordinary experience to be in the realm with all of these people's knowledge and their experience of life. And to find stillness in that place when you get old, with all the information and all the thoughts and all the memories in your head, and then still be able to find some stillness with all that traffic, with all that memories, with all that mind, with all those thoughts, and then come back to a place of stillness. It's an extraordinary thing that you're created with them. And I think there's something happens in the stillness. I wrote this Tuesday's class, I did a live class on Tuesday, and the advanced class, it's on YouTube. So if you want to have a look at it, and it talks about silence. Silence is not silent. That was the title of the class. Silence is not silent. Because when you go into that place of stillness and there is the silence, it's anything but silent. Because all knowledge and wisdom lives inside that stillness. When you're not in there, it's just all full of head thoughts and blah, blah, blah. Your mind created all its thoughts. But when you get out of the mind, you go into the stillness, there's something remarkable lives inside the stillness, but inside the all-knowing is inside the stillness. And you don't even have to speak it because it's just sitting inside. You just know it inside the space. So for your ladies to discover that and have that experience of that before they decide to go wherever they go after they leave this planet, what a beautiful gift to give them, Catherine, so they can have that experience. Because most people go out, don't even know that exists. They don't know the stillness exists. They've got so much stuff going on. If anything, it's got worse. They've got more information, more history, more memories, more everything. And it's harder to let it go. The more you get, the harder it is to let it go because there's more to hang on to. And to give them that experience where they find that inner stillness inside that place, they walk out of that door and complete in some form of contentment in their heart. What a beautiful gift to give them. And I just wanted to speak to that for you, Catherine, and what you do, I think is remarkable in that. And having that experience, I teach younger people, but you get a very different experience than I do. And I admire your tenacity for staying teaching for such a long time. And I know you've been teaching for longer than that too, longer than 12 years. You've been teaching for a long, long time. And yeah, I just want to congratulate you with that. I just want to honor that and thank you for bringing that into the group. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else like to comment about? We'll stay with the construct, the idea of reality. We'll stay with that one for the moment, and then I'm going to go into the other one. Anybody else like to comment about that? Because remember, that's just our point of view, our opinions, because we don't really know. We're just ideas. Because if you don't have some sort of reality of what happens when we die, then it can be a really live in a lot of fear. But if you have a contented place where you think this is what happens when I die, then there's a safeness that happens with that. There's a contentment that comes with that. But if you don't, then you're just going to be fear if you die, it all goes. My mum had a fear that when you die, that's it, finished. And so she had a huge fear of death. She was like, you die from this one, it's gone. And I tried to open doors of possibility with her, but she wouldn't go there. Hers was, this is it, this is all you get. And she was so fearful, unbelievably fearful. And I don't think we're meant to live like that. Well, that's not true. We can live any way we like. I don't want to live like that anyway. So
I'd like to make a comment, Peter.
Yeah, go, Corinne.
Yeah, really inspiring, Catherine. Is it Catherine, is it? Listening to you and your wisdom. And I love the piece around stillness. And what I'm really interested in is when we get into that state of stillness, what I see from the work that I do on myself and with my clients is it tends to dissipate fear. And I think from my understanding of my very small understanding of, being witness to my dad's death and a few other people's, is that is such a key point when we are transitioning. And I think for me, something like Qigong has helped that so much to kind of unwind that state that we can get into, that I think so many of us just walk in the world asleep like that. And so hearing you, it's so inspiring. It gave me chills. It's like, yes, keep on doing this work. Because I think, just this morning I came across this really odd website, and it's called Trans Surfing. I wrote it down, Trans Surfing. I don't know if anyone has heard of it before.
Trans surfing?
Hey, Trans Surfing. But it's basically the stuff I've been doing since I was a kid, that whole dimensional traveling when you get into a different state. And I realized that when I did the Qigong, I did it in a safer way with Peter, going into that different space when you kind of drop down into that level. And it's that, what you talked about, I just love that in that space of complete quietness is the answers. So yeah, I just wanted to add my little 2 cents worth in with that. And I think that's where the fear just kind of dissipates and you see it I see it as a story and an illusion. That's where I start seeing my stories as an illusion, and I love it. And sometimes I have to be reminded to get back into that space. I don't know about you guys, like the last 6 months I've been on a reasonably traumatic journey, and I forgot to get back into that space. So it's so nice just to reconnect, and I just don't think it's a coincidence that I was looking at that this morning and then I've jumped back into here. So yeah, thank you.
Nothing's ever a coincidence. Never. It doesn't work that way. It's meant to happen. Whatever it is, good, bad, or indifferent, is always part of it, and it's always there for your learning. It's always there for your higher good. No matter what happens, it's always there for you. And that's hard to get your head around that, because some things are quite traumatic that happen in life. And how do you see that they're useful somehow? Well, they are. They're all part of our journey, to awaken our consciousness. And some of them are quite dramatic. Some of them can be really, really hard, but it certainly wakes you up. And I can only say that from my own experience. Some of my biggest things that have happened to me in my life have been the most traumatic, but have been the most revealing understandings of who I really am myself, and what my experience of life has been traumatic, but it's been extraordinary how big it is, and still goes on today. It hasn't stopped. It started a roller coaster of these different things because of one event, just created this other events all to keep happening. But the learning from all of them has just been extraordinary. I'm not sure if it ever stops. But Corinne, thanks for adding that. And I'll have a look at that. I'll have a look, because I like looking at things that people have come up with ideas. But a lot of the ideas aren't new. It's just they're just using different terminology for something that's been around and taught us. Like, so I say that the Maya, the understanding of Maya, has been around for thousands of years, that we're just having a mental experience. I just think it's great. So it's nothing new, just a different way of packaging it, slightly different, but the construct or the concept is still the same. Anyway, thank you for that. Thank you for coming. So
I had
go.
I had a interesting experience this morning, sort of along the same lines. But lately I've been doing paintings, and before I paint, I go on a shamanic journey and see who wants to paint, who wants to come forward. And this morning a lizard came forward, and the lizard ended up sitting on my heart. And I don't hear things, but I see and I feel things. And I said, what are you trying to tell me? And I got this beautiful rainbow bubble going out. And it reminded me of the Qigong bubble, which you speak about. But it was only in the front. And what I got from it was, keep what we want in our bubble and just let everything else go. It's like focusing, because lately I've been noticing the subtle difference between what I don't want and what I do want. It's like, I've got to go to the dentist and I don't want to lose any more teeth. So it's like, no, I want healthy teeth. I want a mouthful of healthy teeth. And the difference is, it's huge if you feel into the energy of it. So
yeah. No, that's
so I'm looking
true.
forward to painting my lizard and seeing what else he's got to say.
Very cool. I love that. I mean, people would hear that and think, oh, that's just your imagination. You just think of the lizard in your heart, and it talks to you and it tells you what you want to do and it tells you what you can do. But what if it's real? What if it actually is real and it is true? What you're seeing is just part of the construct. We're just seeing messages through whatever this construct is to us in whatever way it delivers it. Some people get message in their mind and words. Some people have things that happen to them. It speaks to them in situations, and sometimes it speaks to them in pictures and words and imagery. And I think they're all valuable. But I'll just say, well, what if it does speak to you that way? What if the conscious speaks to you in all different ways, but it speaks your language? It speaks your language that you hear because you love imagery, and so it speaks to you that way. It speaks to me, and things happen. This unplanned things happen. I'll do something, and a butterfly will land on my shoulder or something, and things will happen, and there's a crack of a loud noise after I say something, and it's just like it just confirms everything. And I see it all the time. I know it's talking about with the reason that the course and things will happen, and I plan that. And I say I plan it because it's happening, and it happens all the time. It's like it never stops. You know, we go out to do a ceremony, a fire ceremony, and it was all cloudy, and we couldn't see the moon, and then it just cleared up, and we had this beautiful clear sky, and we could see the Southern Cross, and it was just like this stunning night. And I just say, yeah, I planned that. Well, why not? If I want that to happen, why can't it happen?
Exactly.
I'm not saying I'm anybody else. Anybody else, I think, can do exactly the same thing. You just got to believe you can. And I think whatever it comes from the lizard, if that's the message, whatever it is. Because if we put our ideas of what we think it should be and how it should come to us, then we miss the message. Because it doesn't necessarily come. I remember that story about the guy who was sitting there. He wanted to know what the answer to 6 plus 6 is. And he was sitting there and he was looking to God. And he says, God, what's the answer to 6 plus 6? And there was just silence. He says, no, I'm asking you, God, what's the answer to 6 plus 6? And a little girl walked up to the guy, tugged on his trousers and said, Mister. And he said, yes, what do you want? And she said, it's 12. And he said, go away. I'm talking to God. God, so what's the answer to 6 plus 6? He goes, Mister, what? She said, it's 12. Sometimes it comes in not the way we expect it.
Yeah.
So if you're open to the possibility of anything can speak to you in any way, and it will speak to the way that you like to hear it, because it already knows the way you listen.
Yes.
And when you got that open, then it just speaks to you. And I love that sharing that you just did then about the lizard, because that's the way it comes to you, imagery. And it's really, really beautiful. And paint it. Paint the imagery. It's lovely. I think it's very, very cool, because that's your language. It's your spiritual language as such, which is really great. And you'll see things visually when you go out. You'll see something in a design and go, oh, look at that. That's really cool, because you'll see the imagery. But then somebody will hear it in words. Somebody will say something, words or something, and they go, oh yeah, that's correct. Looking at that word, that was perfect what they just said then. And so we all have, there's so many different ways. I just pointed at a couple of different ways that it speaks to us. But I think it does all the time. Yeah, anyway. Just great. So thanks for sharing that. It was really cool. Who are we really? I don't know. I have my theories, but they're just theories. Anyway.